Hi again. So it's a beautiful day today, and I did get back from my walk not that long ago. I did my 8 kilometer walk today, and I feel good. The weather is getting cooler, and so when the weather is cooler, I don't have as many blood pressure problems as I normally would do. And so I was able to do my walk today with minimal effort, right? So it felt really good. And on the way, I wanted to talk about this because on the way on my walk, I normally kind of like browse in the windows as I'm going by the thrift store, which is on my way. And so I was going toward the window to browse, and I seen this gentleman. He had what do you call them? A travel trailer, and he had it parked in front of where the laundromat was, well, across the way. And there was, like, a little bit of distance from where he parked to where the front of the laundromat was. And so I was watching him as I was walking toward him, and he was really struggling. He had a cane. He had just hopped down out of the trailer, and it was a very big travel trailer. And it actually looked like a tank. It was that color and that style. It was really, really big. So it was kind of like something that you would use off grid. It was a massive machine. And so I was kind of surprised to see this elderly gentleman hop down out of it with a cane. And he was struggling because he had a shoulder bag with, it looked like laundry. It was massive. It was a big red bag, and he was really struggling trying to walk with the cane, lock the travel trailer, and carry this big bag of, I guess, clothing. So I was walking toward him. So I said, let me help you with that. I said, let me help you. He says, really? I said, yeah, let me help you, right? I mean, think about it. I'm in my 60s, so I'm sure that there's going to come a day where I'm not going to be able to lift things. And trust me, this bag he was carrying was heavy. So I took the bag, I slung it over my shoulder, and I said, I'll walk it over to the laundromat, inside the laundromat for you, and I'll come back and help you. And he said, oh, wonderful, wonderful, right? So he said, are you sure you don't mind? I said, yeah, no, I don't mind at all. And I was on my way for a walk anyway. So that's exactly what I did. So I carried this bag, and it was heavy. Trust me, it was heavy. It was kind of like pressing down on my shoulder, but I thought, you know what? He certainly can't carry it, and I'm not going to drag it. So I mean, it didn't do me any harm to do it, right? It didn't do him any harm. So I carried it for the gentleman, and I walked inside the laundromat. I put it down, and then I went back to help him walk to the laundromat. And when I got out there, he was just so thankful, like so very just wonderful, wonderful person with, his thanking me for it. I mean, he didn't go over the top, but he was very just a wonderful person. He sounded so, so sincere. Anyhow, so we got to talking, and I said, "Oh, you just coming back from camping?" And he says, "No." He says, "I live in that." I said, "You live in that?" I said, "Yeah. I watch YouTubers who do a lot of the SUV life, or the RV life, I should say. And so I watch a lot of them, and I'm really, how do you like it?" I said, "I'm really interested." And so we had a little bit of a conversation. And he said it's a wonderful life. He finds it's good for him. He says the hardest thing is like doing laundry and things like that, like having to find a laundromat. And when you have your own place, it's different, right? So you have to be kind of minimalistic. Anyhow, so he got into the laundromat, and I took the bag over to where he would have to put the clothing in the wash machine. And he said thank you or whatever, and we were talking. I said, "Do you have a YouTube channel?" He says, "No, I don't." He says, I never thought of that." I said, "Well, is there a lot of people around the area that we live? Is there a lot of people, or do you travel from province to province?" He says, "Oh, well, in the wintertime," he says, I have family down in the States, so usually in the wintertime I will drive down to Florida, and I will spend time in Florida for the winter." So I thought that was really, really interesting. And I asked him, I said, "How old are you?" And he said, "I'm 72 years old." 72. I was like flabbergasted. I was flabbergasted. So he's in his 70s. Actually, to be honest with you, I think he said he was 82. No, but anyway, he was up in age, right? And so I was just really shocked at the fact that anyone, I mean, even me, I'm over 60 and I'm thinking, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could continually drive because, as an elder person, you get tired. You get tired easily. I mean, doing tasking routines like even washing the floor, doing the dishes, it's a bit of a drain. And so living that lifestyle has got to be tough. So we were talking about it, and he was telling me that yes, he had a beautiful condo in the local area where we live, and he sold it, and he bought this RV, and he decided that that's what he was going to do because he didn't want to leave a big footprint. He wanted to downsize. He wanted to downsize. And so he found that this was easier, it was more economical for him. And I'm kind of thinking now with the price of gasoline and things and just the upkeep on vehicles, I'm kind of thinking like, I don't know if it is actually cheaper to do that. However, it's something that he got into, and he says that it's working really, really good for him. And so he was very excited about talking about his experiences, and he said that it's certainly working for him, and that's a wonderful thing. I think that's absolutely wonderful because I mean I'm at that age, and I've been looking at downsizing. I've been looking at tiny homes, living in a tiny home, living in a tiny home community where I still have that support system, but I can limit the footprint that I'm leaving. Now I don't have a car. I don't drive a car at this point. Not saying that I wouldn't. If I had the money, I might buy myself a little SUV if I had the money. So I'm looking at it that way, and I'm kind of thinking, well, I might do the same thing. I don't know if I would be healthy enough or have the wherewithal to actually drive an what do you call it an RV. Okay, I don't know if I would even have the ability to drive as long a distance as he did. And he says that he drives all the way down to Florida. I don't know if I could do that, especially as a senior woman traveling alone. Now, however, he was walking with a cane. And so I said he kind of had a limp, and he had his feet were in a cast. One of his feet was kind of like in a cast, a walking cast, or a foot cast, the soft ones. And I kind of said, what happened to your foot? I mean, was it something when you were camping out or what? And he said, no. And this really freaked me out. He said, no, I had one of my toes amputated. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, not only are you living in an RV and having to travel all the time, you're dealing with health issues, and now you're having to deal with the fact that you lost a toe. And so I was kind of thinking like, damn, like this is where it's heading nowadays. This is where it's heading nowadays. Our seniors are basically having to adapt to different lifestyles. I mean, it's not very often that you see a senior that's able to stay in their own home, or that is able to afford to stay in their own home. And I know that myself, I have a tiny little apartment, and I'm struggling to keep it together. I am truly, truly struggling to keep it together. And I have a pet. Having a pet is just like having a child. So when it comes up time for holidays and things like that, like this year, Thanksgiving, I spent by myself. I had no one here for Thanksgiving. And even if I did, it wouldn't have mattered because I couldn't afford a turkey. The turkeys, I looked at them at the store, and they were like $50 some for a small turkey. Like $69 for a little bit larger turkey. I couldn't do it. So, oh well, it is what it is, right? So, but I'm kind of looking at myself as a senior, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm 63. What happens when I'm that age? And I'm actually kind of fighting with myself to what age he told me. I thought he said 71 or 72, but actually I think he said in his 80s, because I was kind of like thrown back by what he said, and the fact that he said he was up so far, because I think I said, he said, no, I'm older than that. I think I said 71, and he said, no, in my 80s. And I'm thinking, whoa, like, wow, that's crazy. And especially, if you don't have a family, if you don't have a support system like children or brothers or sisters or whatever, and you're a senior, your circle gets a lot smaller. It gets a lot smaller. And so your support network gets a lot smaller. And that's where I am. I'm at that stage right now. I have to take a drink of my protein. I'm thirsty. I put my collagen peptides in with my coffee. And that's what I'm having right now. But yeah, the seniors, if you don't have a support system, things are tough. Things are very, very tough. So, I was kind of surprised that a man that old um, would be, would even have the strength or the wherewithal to do basically what he's doing, is kind of living pillar to post, moving from place to place and finding a place to park as we're going out of the summer hours and into the winter. Now, I know that he said that he goes down south for the winter. However, up until that point, he's going to have to find a place to park for the evening. And so he's going to have to continually move. And then when I came on my way back from my walk, I was passing the same place and he was still there. And takes about half an hour for my walk. And he was still there. He was parked across, I think, 3 or 4 lanes of parking, which is illegal where he had parked. But nobody said anything to him. However, he was sleeping. He had dozed off, and he had dozed off with the window down and with the RV running, right? And so his window was rolled down. Now, nowadays, I have witnessed so many horrible things that are taking place where there are groups, gangs of people that are literally walking into a Walmart and ripping it off, stealing stuff, taking big televisions and literally ripping them out of their chains from the store and literally taking them out of the store. Now, can you imagine an elderly gentleman in his 80s falls asleep in his RV, okay, has one toe amputated, is not very, mobile, is not be able to protect himself, right? And there's a group of thugs, and that's basically what they are. Low class, low life thugs. People who don't want to work for a living. They don't have what it is that they want, and so they think they have the right to steal it, to break it, to take what's not theirs. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, get a damn job. Get a damn job like the rest of us. When I was in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, and even my 60s, I worked, and I worked like a demon. Trust me. I would work 3 contracts in order to afford food or to pay the bills for the month, okay? So I totally vehemently disagree with thievery, and that's what it is. In the darkness of night. You kind of think about the dark force being those people with, that attitude. And I'm not talking cultures. I'm talking people in general. You don't have to be, there's not one specific culture that is any better than anybody else, okay? It's that ideology. It's got nothing to do with your culture. It's got to do with that ideology that is coming into mainstream now, where you think that you can have whatever it is that you want based on if you want it, that you don't think that you have to pay or you have to work for things in your life. Nowadays, the ideology seems to be pulling away from, a good day's work, okay, for a good wage. Now it's like, well, if you want to just break into so-and-so's house because they just purchased a new TV, right? They might have worked 20 years to purchase that TV, or they might have done without little particulars to purchase that TV, but because you want it, you can just break into their damn house and you can take it, because that's the ideology that's going around now. So, it's kind of like, it's crazy. I see this shit happening and I think, I can just shaking my head. I'm just shaking my head. I don't need the fancy riches. I'm in my 60s. If I was to win the lottery tomorrow, it might be a little bit different, but I still wouldn't be walking around with gold jewelry. You know what I'm saying? I don't need it. See this? I just bought this today. And the reason why, it cost me $2. Yeah. And it's got a cat on it. And I have a little cat that I absolutely love. And I thought, wow. So I bought it at the thrift store, right? Right. So I don't need anything fancy at this. You can't take it with you. And it doesn't matter how big your TV is. You're not going to get it in that damn casket. What are you thinking? And I'll tell you something else. When you go to jail for stealing that damn TV, because eventually you're going to get caught, right? Somebody's going to recognize your picture and you're going to get caught. You know what? You're going to have to share the TV in the common room with the rest of the prisoners, right? So I don't really think it's worth it. However, let's get away from that because that gets political, right? But what I was trying to say is that usually you would have to worry about someone thieving in the dead of night when, there's a less chance of being caught. But now the new element of criminal is brazen. They're brazen and they're brave, and they'll park right in your driveway and they'll break into your house and they will carry it out, load after load after load, and put it in their truck and then drive away. And I watched that. There was a black SUV apparently that was breaking, literally parked right in the driveway of somebody's home, and a gang of thugs, which is what they are, broke into the person's house, cleaned them dry, put it all in this truck, and then or in this SUV, and then drove away. Simple as that, in broad daylight. Yeah. So, I had concern for this elderly gentleman, and I was thinking, gee, that's got to be pretty rough. That's got to be pretty rough. But then I look at myself, and I'm a senior. And I was attacked on a walk for no reason, just because the person didn't like the way I looked. And that person was more than likely in a period in their life of need or want, and so they struck out at someone. And who did they strike out at? They struck out at me, a 63-year-old woman. And so I was bruised. I had a lot of bruising on my face, and there was really nothing done about it because I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have any info. I didn't have any what would you say, outlets. I didn't have any way of protecting myself from that assault. However, I wasn't even able to describe that person because that person had kept themselves hidden, a mask, a hoodie, right? And then they took off running while I was dealing with the repercussions of being knocked down to the ground. And so I'm kind of saying to you is that, really, our seniors, I mean, we have paid tax, we have paid taxes, we are worthy. It's not just because we're old now and we're not able to do what the younger generation is. It's the learning experience that we have should be important. The fact that we made it to be seniors, and I mean, I lived through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now into the year, 2000s. I mean, come on, think about this. What are we doing for our seniors? We're doing shit. We're doing nothing, right? And with the housing situation, more than likely, if you can't afford to get into a long-term care, or if you can't get into a retirement home, of which neither I would go to, neither, because I have worked in them and I have seen atrocities that have happened in long-term care wings. I have seen atrocities that have happened in retirement homes. I have seen thievery in those scenarios. I have seen where the high mucky mutts that work in those agencies, they pad their pocket, but they don't pad the needs and necessities that are needed to run those agencies. And the workers are overworked. They're overworked. They're given 10, 15 minutes to get a whole routine done. They're not allowed to socialize with the clientele. They're not allowed to put a human element or a human face to their work. So I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. But so let's say you can't get into one of those agencies, or you don't want to, like myself. And a lot of people are like me. There's no place for us. There's no place for us. The rents are outrageous. You can't pay the rent for what's the word? A wheelchair accessible unit, or something that is going to accommodate your needs as you're getting older. To be able to afford those places, you would have to have saved your money from the time that you were start at work at the age of 14 till now, and I don't think there's too many of us that had those really big retirement packages, unless you were a politician. And I'm kind of seeing even politicians, well, no, no, actually, politicians do get pretty good retirements. Let's just put it that way. But we're not all politicians, right? So let's put it that way. And our veterans don't get shit. I know veterans who are homeless, living on the street. And so what do they turn to? They might turn to some type of addiction so that they can deal with um, the roughness of living on the street. And trust me, it's a lot. It's a lot. They deal with a lot living on the street. But let's get back to the story. So let's say you can't afford that. There's no place to go. There's no place to go. If you don't have, I mean, sure as hell, if you don't have a car and have the money for insurance, you don't even have a vehicle to live in. And here was this senior in his 80s who was living in an RV. I mean, sure, he sold his condo and he was able to accommodate that need that he had to put the gas in, but gas prices are rising. Winter is coming. I mean, as you're getting older, and if you're driving, let's say he's driving down to the States, but let's say you're not. Let's say you don't have the ability to go States, but you have a car and you're living in your car. In Canada, you know how damn cold it gets here? I've done it. I've done it. I lived in my car for a year. Yeah, I lived in my car for a year because of the housing costs. So yes, and I had family members who lived in, beautiful homes, but none, not one of them extended a hand to me and said, listen, do you need a place to sleep? I mean, I've even approached people in my family, people who you would think would go to the plate for you because, I mean, they are your family. And I was told, no, I had to leave. I couldn't stay there for the night. And I slept in my car and I damn near froze that night. So yes, I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to be cold. And you know what? That whole time that I lived in my car, I had a job. I had a job. I had a job. But I didn't make enough to put the gas in the car, to continue to pay the insurance, to get an apartment. I didn't have enough. And so, I mean, there were strangers that helped me before my family did. My family never helped me in any way, okay? They never helped me in any way. That whole year that I was struggling, that it was freezing in my car, okay? And sleeping the night in the winter in Canada in my car. Yeah. And I would drive to work. I would have to drive to work. I would work and then I would come home to my car. So I know what it's like to be homeless. And it's it's no ball of honey. Let's tell you that way. It's no ball of honey. It's terrifying. It's scary. Yeah, it's scary, especially in the culture that we have now, or in the world that we have now. I was terrified. I used to get followed. There were times that I was followed. And I had to lock my cars, and I had to keep driving because if I stopped, I would have been attacked. Yeah, no, listen. And let's say you're sleeping in your car at the water and you gotta pee. Yeah, that makes it rough. And let's say you're living in a spot or you're parked in a spot where there is no Tim Hortons or Starbucks to kind of jump in, get a coffee, and go for a pee, right? Yeah, it's a scary scenario. So to see or to witness a senior living in an RV, I think he's lucky. I think he's one of the lucky ones. He's one of the lucky ones. I just hope that, the big guy up above keeps him protected on his journey down to the sunny south, where he won't have to deal with the cold, right? Now think about it. Today when I met him, he had just had his toe amputated in the matter of the past weeks. He had had his toe amputated and he was healing from that. And he went home to what? To an RV. How sad is that? There was a time when our seniors were important, when the seniors were the roots of the family, and when they were respected and they were taken care of, and they were, I won't say they were adulated for their life experience, but You know, in especially there's one culture that does do that, and I think it's the Korean culture or the Hawaiian culture where they actually acknowledge the fact that seniors are important, and the family takes care of a senior until that senior passes, and the knowledge that that senior has is passed down, right? And you know, there was a time I was going to delete my channel, and my one of my children gave me, just kind of went up one side and down the other and said, no, don't be deleting that. What if when you pass, those videos, we would like to watch those videos. They will bring back memories of you and things that you did and things that you said and how you spoke. And so I thought, okay, fine. So I pulled out a couple of the videos that I hadn't completely deleted, and I did delete all of them. So there was a few still on my feed, and so I reposted them. And you know, I mean, if that's something that is important to the kids, then so be it. Who am I to argue? You know, and I do have different ideologies than other people, and maybe my kids are going to love to look back on that and say, geez, mom was a bit of a you know, or geez, she had some far out thoughts, or geez, I'm glad mom kept that video up because now I know how to make crackers. I don't know. And I do make bread and things like that, you know, but I did teach my children that when they were very, very young. So, but I'm kind of, this video is mostly about our seniors. And speaking of cultures, I mean, I think it's the Korean culture or the Japanese culture where seniors are valued for their life experience. They're valued. We don't see that very often anymore. Anyhow, you know, kind of, I'm going to end this on kind of like a food for thought. So what I was thinking is, you know, they don't want to allow tiny homes, right? And they don't want to allow tiny homes because they can't tax tiny homes, and they need those tax dollars to fund all the extraneous things that are taking place in our world, and all the funding for all these programs, and you know, the case studies that they have to do is, why do birds fly, and why is there, you know, why is I don't know, they come up with the stupidest things for studies, like I can't even think of the stupid ideologies, you know, like why do birds fly? I don't know, but they come up with all these different studies, and the tax dollars fund those things, but they don't fund anything for seniors. But let's say we had different communities, instead of shutting our seniors away in a home, a long-term care home, and turning that key and then not worrying about them again because they're taken care of, right? And they're out of our hair, right? So instead of doing that, why wouldn't we open tiny home communities that run as senior care homes? Tiny home communities where they don't lose that sense of independence, where they don't lose that sense of individualism, okay? Where they actually are treated like people, like humans, not like being warehoused in a blockade. They're like housing our seniors who have perhaps mobility issues or are starting to get, you know, semblances of dementias and things like that, instead of giving them that last little bit of respectable living or humanistic living, okay? Instead of locking them away like a bunch of animals in a cage, give them something. Give them a sense of that finality that is going to give them a sense of respect and humanism. Change that reality for them. There is a place in the States that focuses on people with dementias, and they have created a tiny little a tiny home community where they are basing it on the old days, okay? They have like you know, the saloons and oh, what do you call those things, like the Western, it's based on the Western world, right? Back in the day where they had the saloons and they had you know, the old music, the old sense of nostalgia that's coming back from the old times, right? From the, I don't know what century that is, but yeah, it's based on the old Western, like the old Western movies, right? And they are housing seniors in there who are actually living out their last days, perhaps in a fairy tale world, but what does it matter? What does it matter? And the one thing they tell you when you're working, and I worked with seniors in long-term care and in retirement homes, and the thing they tell you is a senior can go into a state of shock if they're talking to you, they're saying something to you, they're thinking that you are their daughter, their daughter Jill, right? And then all of a sudden you're telling them, no, I'm not Jill, I'm Mary, or I'm Gretchen, or whatever, right? I'm not. You can put them into a state of shock, and it will, take them down that road of dementia quicker, right? What does it hurt? What does it hurt to let someone live out their last days in happiness? I don't see anything wrong with it. And giving them that sense of individualism where they still have a home to live in. And not all seniors have dementias. Some seniors just have mobility issues, but they're not able to live in their own home because of those mobility issues. And so if you put a person such as that into a tiny home community where you have your PSWs, your nurses, your doctors, they still can come to visit, they can still come to do your care, they can come to give you medication, but they come to your home. They come to your tiny home. They knock on the door, they come in, they give you your medications. It would be like a traveling doctor. Think about it, right? Back in the Western days, what did they have? They had doctors that would travel to your home. Yeah. Albeit on a horse and buggy, but, there could be a certain tiny facility for the doctors and the nurses, when they come to work during the day to leave their belongings. But when you're working with these seniors, you would go to their homes, to their tiny homes. And wouldn't that be a wonderful community to have? And that would be exactly what I would love to have. I would love to have it. And I'm in my 60s, so I don't know if that's ever going to happen. It might be a pipe dream. It might be a big fantasy for me. But you know what? It's possible. It's possible. If some of these bigwigs who are always talking about the world and how they want to make the world better, take your hand, put your hand in your pocket and pull out some of those coffers. Pull out some of those $1 million or $1 billion and start up these tiny home communities for seniors. Think about it, right? It's helping everyone. Think about it. I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment, but if I had a tiny home in a senior community, okay, there could be a person who's working, a young working person who needs this apartment to use this apartment. And I would be supported in a tiny home community, and there needs to be more of them, but they're not going to do it. But they are going to fund or allow these big companies to come in and build multi-million-dollar facilities that they can charge outrageous prices for, and no one can afford them. In the town that I'm living, it's almost ridiculous. If you walk downtown where I live, okay, you will see all these beautiful, and I mean beautiful, well-built apartment buildings. And you know what? They're all empty. And they're empty because no one can afford to live there. And sure as hell not a senior. And sure as hell not a student. And sure as hell not the working poor. Who's going to live there? You know who's going to live there? The bigwigs. The bigwigs. The retired politicians and the retired city workers. And the people who have a pension. Yeah, they can live there. Actually, they can afford to buy the homes that are being built, right? But none of the rest of us, none of us can afford this. Whose fantasy are we living in? Mine or yours? I'll see you in the next video. Good Lord be willing.